What is up, everybody? Brian Mendler back in your life on this Monday in March. And I am super excited today to be joined by my buddy from Binghamton, New York, Kyle Skinner. What's up, man? It's good to see you. How you been?
What's going on? I've been great. How are you, Brian?
So I haven't seen you. We first met in person a couple months ago at my conference, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Out at Tioga Downs.
And so I meet so many people, and between then and now, I usually forget about what our conversations are. But I want to tell you the one thing that jumps out that I remember about our conversation. It was at lunch where you were talking about bringing in laundry. You brought in a washer and dryer, I believe, for parents at your school. Am I right about that?
Yeah, so going back a few months now, like early beginning on in the school year, we did a survey for some parents around like what are some of the needs that they have for their kids. We also have a backpack program that goes out every Friday. We send food that's sustainable for the kids throughout the weekend to make sure that they get something to eat on a regular basis. So we had about 15 slots that we had set up, and we had like 38 parents respond within the first week. So my social worker came to me and was like, "We have a problem. We got to make sure these kids are getting fed." So we have a capital project happening in our basement right now, huge, extensive renovations. So around the same time we had the conversation, I went down to do my daily walkthrough to see the progress and whatnot. And it just hit me. We had a room down there that was like perfect for a food pantry. And I called district office right away, who fully supported the idea. We made some changes to that capital project. And starting next school year, we're going to open more than just a food pantry now. So we're looking at the possibility of bringing laundry down there. We already have it located elsewhere in the building now. But we're looking to bring that down, sustainable food pantry, and it's not just going to be canned goods. We've got like a community has been kicking in like crazy, so we're going to have fresh produce, refrigeration, the works down there. And what's really cool is it's got its own separate entrance, so it's a discreet way for parents to come in. But hey, while you're here, we also offer these services for you. So we're going to have like a whole parent resource center. So as part of that center, we hope to get like job seminars, financial aid seminars, Broome Community College, Binghamton University partnering and coming in and providing workshops for our families.
Amazing. Do me a favor, tilt your camera down just a little bit.
Yeah,
So just a little bit. I'm seeing a lot of the white background behind you, not as much of you. There you go.
you want to
Much
get
better.
that pretty face, right?
Yeah, the face and the shirt. We got matching
Yeah,
outfits. I love it. I love it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
did you come up with that on your own? Did you are you the catalyst behind that? And when you say fam food pantry, are you talking about just for kids in school? Or are you talking about this is like a community thing where people can come in and sort of get what they need?
So we're going to start working with just our families. But basically, what happened was when we saw the need for it, and my social worker came to me, she was thinking like some canned goods in a closet. And I just kind of said, if we're going to do this, let's do this. So we reached out to the food bank of Broome County and Southern Tier. We've been having conversations with Chow, trying to get things up off the ground and running. Um, so basically what we're where we kind of the way it originated was we've always wanted to have this community resource center. The prior principal, that was something that she and I had talked about when I was the assistant principal. And then when I took over and all this started to happen at the same time, like if we're going to do anything, let's do it big and let's do it right. So it just kind of morphed from like let's try to put some extra canned foods up in a pantry upstairs to like let's do this. So
What was the capital project they were doing down there anyway? Like, so you said they were already doing something. Were you doing some kind of renovation at your school?
yeah, it's sick down there. So they're still working on it now, but all of our pre-K and kindergarten classes are down in the basement. So we have four kindergarten and three pre-K, one 3-year-old and two 4-year-old rooms. So they're redoing all the classrooms, and those are done. The kids have moved back downstairs, but right now they're working on this huge, large motor skills room. It's basically like an indoor play space. It has dramatic play stages. It's got a soft play surface floor. It's got elevations and ramps, bike paths. It's you name
Wow.
it, it's got it. Yeah. And so there's a lot of dead space down there. The building used to be a middle school, so there's like an old shower locker room that was just collecting dust. So they really knocked it out, opened everything up. We also have a motor lab for a lot of the kids who have some sensory issues. So as part of that motor lab, they have like 10, I think it's 10 30-second to 1 minute rotations depending on the age. And it goes from like riding bikes to like crossing the body and the midpoint of the body. different sensory pressure points, like you name it, they do it down there. So it's a really good resource for us. And then on top of that, we have a new OTPT room down there. It's going to have a rock climbing wall. It's got a big drawbridge to walk across. They went all out on it. It's beautiful.
How'd they get funding for that? Was that private, or that was a grant, or how'd they do
No,
that?
so that was the capital project through New York State. So every so many years, your building gets capital projects, and our building was in some much needed. It had a lot of need for some TLC. So they redid our entryway and our main office. So we now have like a secured vestibule where you have to get buzzed through multiple sets of doors to increase that safety and sense of security in the building.
And you work in a challenging school, right? I mean, you work in the inner city with as tough a population as there is, right?
Yeah, definitely. So we have like 460 kids in our building. Poverty rate's close to 90%. So we definitely have some challenging circumstances, but like the most amazing kids, families, like I'm just so blessed to be here and be a part of this.
What
And I actually,
made Go ahead,
go ahead. So I actually started the educational journey, I guess, if you will. My mom used to run a daycare center up in Saratoga Heights. So I would do when I was in high school, both my wife and I have been dating for a long time. We would do a summer school program for them. So we were like juniors, seniors in high school, and both of us just were like, this is it. Like, this is what we want to do. That's about a mile away, and that serves our kids. So we fast forward a few years. I went through college, kind of changed the game plan, and knew I wanted to get into administration pretty early on. So I got my first job here at Benjamin Franklin, and the ironic thing was it was with the kids that I had seen in that summer program when they were in kindergarten and first grade. I then had them in fifth grade. So it was a cool experience to see it come full circle.
Yeah. So, what was your journey? Did you teach though for a while first?
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to get into administration. I had a professor at Oneana, and he kind of pulled me aside. It was a leadership course and just asked if I had ever wanted to be in administration. I was kind of jaded at the time, and I was like, no, man, I want to be in the classroom. Classroom's where it's at. That's where you have the impact. So he said, well, sit back and think about it. You can impact your 25 kids, or you can impact a building of, 500, 1,000, 200 kids every single day, every single year. And that resonated with me. Since then, I've kind of been on a mission to get my message out and to touch as many students and families as I possibly can, and have a positive impact on them. So it comes with tremendous responsibility, that parents put their trust in us here as a school. But I absolutely love what I'm doing here at Benjamin Franklin for sure. But to answer your question, I started as an aide in the district. Actually, there was no jobs to be had. There's hundreds of applicants for a couple of jobs when I first started. So I started as a one-on-one aide for a student who had behavioral concerns, and they were thinking about a self-contained placement for. So I was able to work with him. He was in third grade at the time, so I worked with him all through third grade. It started with like just collecting data, and then moved into like an aide position.
What were the
Um,
behaviors from him?
so he had severe ADHD. He was medicated, but it was really sporadic. So it was almost worse because like his body was wanting the medication on the days that it didn't have the medication. And you'd go for a week where things were really solid, similar to the story that you shared about how that medication can be a game changer when it's done consistently with fidelity. But he would leave the classroom. He wasn't really physically aggressive at any time. It was more verbal. So he would get up and curse people out and kind of leave the classroom, just no impulse control. But that was the best thing that ever could have happened to me, right? Because I started this thinking like I want to make a change for these types of kids, but didn't have the mindset yet that I needed. So I really got to know that kid one on one. I got to know his family and his home life, and it was a difficult set of circumstances. And while people thought ADHD was the sole reason for his behaviors, it's not even close. Like this kid just had a lot going on at home. And once we could get to where he was comfortable talking to me about that, we'd have almost like a mini morning meeting and then an after lunch session, where we just would sit down and talk, and I would get to know him and get to know how his day's going, what he needed. Right off the bat, are you hungry, tired, thirsty? And that solves like 3/4 of our problems right there as it is. So I saw a lot of growth in him as time went on. I stayed with him so I was there like 3/4 of the year, third grade year. Fourth grade year, they were ready, like he had made so much progress, they were just going to leave him in a gen ed class. And then it wasn't working out so well. So they called me back. That then morphed into like a long-term substitute position at MacArthur Elementary School. which then ended and turned into a long-term substitute here.
So he's the reason you're in where you're at right now, basically. Without him, you would, right? I mean, kind
Yeah.
of, right? So they called you back for him,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. Yeah, and what was cool about it was the principal at the time went to bat for me because she saw that I built this relationship with him, and I was taking a job that nobody else wanted, and I loved doing it. It wasn't like I was just trying to get by and get through the day. Like I legitimately loved what I was doing, and people thought I was crazy. But like he and I would be walking the halls, and I would just be giving him his lesson in the hallway, like making the most of every opportunity. Every second's a teachable moment. So um, the principal called me in the office and said, "Hey, we have a long-term sub coming up in fifth grade. Do you have any interest?" I was like, "Of course, yeah." So that was my first teaching experience, was in fifth grade over at MacArthur.
Did they put
Um,
him in that class? Was he in that class?
no, so he was in fourth grade at the time, but a lot of times what would happen is he would just come down and he would sit, and the dude was like capable, like he could do things. So he would sit in the fifth grade class and just be taking it all in and soaking it in. And we would provide him like healthy planned breaks at that point in time, but they got him another aide when I left. So then that morphed into fifth grade over here at Benjamin Franklin for a full year LTS. And I just fell in love with it. That was the group of kids that I had way back when up at Saratoga Heights. And I just love there's something about this place that just like it's me. Like I love it. And so the next year I got hired permanently as fifth grade. So I taught fifth grade. I got bumped down to fourth grade a year. And then I spent 3 years as an instructional coach, which I didn't know, like it was a good pathway to leadership for me. And I had a conversation with the principal at the time before I took the position and, explained that this is kind of what I wanted to get into. But I really like the behavioral side of things. But
Hmm.
as soon as I took the position, that just completely was a game changer for me. I get the biggest kick out of I guess pushing people outside their comfort zones and stretching them out. For me, like that's what this is all about. Like I love nothing more than going in and providing PD, whether it's to like a room full of people or to one or two people, or just in my coaching cycle to one individual person, and making them feel uncomfortable. The cool thing about that was I got a week with you. So I can on Monday, I could stretch the envelope so far that I thought they were going to throw something at me. And then by Friday, have them have a whole new mentality and mindset around things.
Yeah, I always joke with people when I do a PD that I'm like your personal trainer, right? I'm going to work you out. And the thing is, usually when you're going out through your workout, you hate your personal trainer. By the end, you love them, but you're paying them to hate you, basically, to hate them during it, because if they don't push you, if they don't work you out, then they're doing something wrong. Back to the boy though, I want to just a couple more questions. What happened to him? Do you know what happened to him? Are you still in touch with him at all?
Yeah, so for a while they moved out of the area and kind of lost touch. I actually was looking him up a while back, and he wasn't in our system
Mm.
anymore. So I did lose touch with him for a while after that, though. He and I would have conversations. Like I would go back to the school and visit him from time to time.
What was the number one thing that you learned from that world working with him? From, whether it's how you built a relationship, or is there something you took away from that has kind of stayed with you in your career?
Oh, so much. The one thing that really stands out, education today is all about perception. It's all about how you're internalizing and taking things. Like people would see me out in the halls walking with him, delivering a lesson as we were walking through the hall. And I think there was that sense of like a lot of people are like, well, why are we catering to him? Why are we doing this or why are we doing that? I looked at it as this kid's getting an education. He's getting a one-on-one education with a certified teacher. Like it doesn't get any better. But you see that all the time, right? Like you see like, oh, I sent him to the office because he did X, Y, and Z, and he left getting a hug and food and what? Well, he got the food because he was hungry, and he got the hug because he hasn't had one in 3 weeks. And we're meeting them where they are. We're giving them what they need. So you can take two different mindsets. You can take the mindset of winning and losing, or you can take the mindset of like, I'm going to give this kid whatever he wants. Because I heard on your podcast a few months back, if you're in it to win it, you already lost. And it
Mm.
could not be more true. So my wife teaches first grade now too. So I'll listen to the podcast and she makes fun of me because I watch it so religiously. And I'll give her like little nuggets that I took from it. And so one night I was like, Susie, listen, if you're in it to win it, you already lost. It applies to this thing that you did today in class. And because she had just told me the story. And so my son's sitting there on the couch and I just had it. Like it was a long day. He had had a long day. He didn't take a nap. And I was getting ready to lose it. And she just looked at me. She's like, Kyle, yeah. if you're in it to win it, you already lost. But
Yeah.
but you need that reminder with your kids more than anything, right? But it's just life lessons, you know. But I really do
Yeah.
think that the perception is just it's everything right now.
You got to get her to listen religiously. She's not on board yet?
She's
Usually once they listen once or twice, they're hooked.
Yeah, we've listened together in the car a few times, and she's getting more and more like into it, and she's buying in more and more. She actually saw you a couple years ago and loved it in Shenango Valley.
Oh, cool. Very
Yeah.
good.
And that's
So what?
actually how I started following you on Twitter and starting to see all the outreach that you had.
So she's actually the person who introed you to me originally.
In a sense, yeah, she came. So I think you did a staff development, like an opening superintendent's
Yeah.
conference day or something like that. And she just came back and was like, "Oh, Kyle, you got to look up this guy, Brian Mendler. Like everything you say, like is exactly what he's talking about. You would really love to listen to him." So I went on YouTube and I started following things and kind of became hooked that way.
Yeah, and then of course, I met you and it was easy. We were quick friends because same mentality. Did you grow up wanting to be in education where as a kid?
So as a kid, I wasn't real motivated by school. So I was kind of like similar but completely different from your background. So it wasn't diagnosed until I was an adult, but I have ADD, not the hyperactivity piece. So for me, a lot of times it was just flying under the radar. Like I could get away with anything because I could keep myself under control. I became really good at like faking like I knew what I was doing. But I remember like vividly being in elementary school, just like with a book open, trying to read the first sentence. And I was more than capable of reading. It's not that I couldn't read, but I would get past the first sentence and my mind's just everywhere but there. But I would just sit there and be complacent with the book in front of me. So I didn't really take education serious until I got into high school, and started playing basketball. And it was just an essential for me to get to the next level. And I knew I wanted to play basketball in college. So junior, senior year, started to get my grades up. I got into the school, Lock Haven University, because of basketball, and really they made a deal where I basically started on academic probation my freshman year. So whatever restrictions they would put in place, like after most people get on it after they have fun freshman year. For me, I started on it at the beginning of freshman year, and I just
Wow.
crushed it my first semester because I got into the education classes, and I was like, this is it. Like I'm able to focus and put my attention and mindset into things that I'm liking and appreciating, and all of a sudden, like I could read educational books, I could read educational research studies, and it would hold my interest.
Yeah.
And it opened up a new world for me. So I would still struggle sometimes in some of those other classes that weren't as geared towards education, but the further you get on, the more applicable education was. So
It's amazing to me how, and I say this all the time, I think the world opens up to a lot of kids if they can get themselves through high school, because you start to get to pick what you want to learn about. In high school, you don't get to pick, you have to, and it's so different really from the real world if you actually think about it. I mean, in the real world to be successful, you have to be great at one thing. I mean, when's the last time you went to the dentist and said, "Tell me about the War of 1812" before you open your mouth? You're like, "Just clean my teeth, dude." Right? Same with, and I say this, I think I've said it on here before. The people who fly the airplanes around this country, just get me up, get me down, doing it in the right place. I don't care what else you know. Whereas in high school, you have to be good at multiple things. I mean, if you're a phenomenal artist or a phenomenal drawer, phenomenal, even athlete or a phenomenal musician, but you're bad at a lot of other things, you're going to really struggle in school. Whereas in life, you can be a phenomenal artist and be a graphic designer and make good money and, not have to do 50 other things. And, I think the real world is about doing one or two things really, really well. And for me, that was a huge help for me in my life. I feel the same way. When I got to college, I tell the story all the time that the first time I ever took a public speaking class is when I learned what success in school felt like. I never really understood success and like what it feels like to dominate, to just be the best at something. I never knew that until I got in my freshman year of college. I took this public speaking class and I got up in front of the room and I went last. So every other student in our class had gone and I was the last one, and they all used notes and they all had a podium, and I got up, no notes, no podium, and I just talked. And I went for, it was only like a 10-minute speech or whatever, 5-minute speech, but I remember just getting done finishing and having every set of eyes in the room fixed on me. And I sat down in the seat. I remember vividly, it was pouring rain at Fredonia. It was pouring rain. And I remember looking, it was a Monday night. I was excited to get out of class. It was Monday night class. Monday Night Football was after that. We're going to go watch the game. And I remember just the rain pounding on the roof and just looking up at the sky saying, that's what it feels like to dominate. Like, that's what it feels like to be the absolute best at something. And I knew in that moment that I was going to do something with my voice. I didn't know what. I mean, and I think that's a big thing that made me go into teaching. You know, I think I told you this. I worked in TV for a short amount of time before I got into education in Binghamton, which is where you are. I worked at WBNG TV, which is up on the hill. And from that moment, but then that was like nights and weekends and holidays. And I was, you know, it was just this crazy world of sports. And I loved sports at the time, but you know, it was to the point where I loved sports, but I would be hanging out with my friends on a Saturday and they'd all be going to the pool and I'd be going into work and I'd be like, I don't want this life forever. What else can I do with my voice? Oh, teaching. You get up in front of people. People have to pay attention to you. You can inspire them. And that's really sort of what guided me to get into teaching, which is, you know, there's just different paths for different people. You have siblings or no?
I do. I have one younger brother. Yeah.
You guys tight?
Yeah, we're pretty close. We're 2 years apart, so we went through school together, and we're still pretty close now. He still lives locally.
Is he in
And
education as well?
so he is not, but his fiance is a special education teacher over at Wilson in the Binghamton City School District as well. He works over at BAE Systems.
You know, I was you were saying your wife and you know and relating sort of what we do in education. And I think whether it's my show or the stuff you learn on here or things in general in education, I think a lot of it ties to directly to life anyway. You know, I have that one slide in my workshop called Retrain Your Brain, and it talks about all these 6 bullet points here, what kids are saying, stop listening to how they're saying it, stay personally connected to kids without taking personally what they do and say, feel sad for them instead of getting mad at them. Second to last word is best. And I always tell people you could rename that to say excellent marriage strategies. Hear what your spouse is saying, stop listening to how they're saying it. Stay personally connected to your spouse without taking personally what they do and say. Feel sad for them instead of getting mad at them. Such a better approach, I think, in general. So tell me more, a little bit more about your school, about what your teachers, what's the struggles that you go through there on a daily basis? You got any challenging kids?
Of course, yeah. I mean, anywhere does, and so often you hear because it's a small urban school in a small urban district that there must be so much behavior there and there must be this and there is, and we're dealing with a lot of stuff. So our biggest struggle right now is actually our K1 students. By the time they hit second and third, fourth, fifth grade, they know what the expectations are. Not to say that every student's like a model student and it's perfect and there's no problems, but by the time they hit those grade levels, we're dealing with normal fifth grade stuff, right? You got your girl drama and so-and-so's dating so-and-so and fights out at recess. But we do have some students in kindergarten and first grade who present themselves with some pretty significant explosive behavior. Really, we've just tried to take on a whole new mindset. So I'm in the second year. I actually use your Menler U stuff, a lot of YouTube, a lot of just trying to reach out to like the different people that you hear on your podcast or other podcasts, books that we've read, and really just trying to rewrite our own story right now. So when I took over, we were in receivership. So we get a chance every 3 years to get re-ranked by the state.
Explain in layman's terms what that means for people that don't live in New York State.
Yeah, so in essence, our superintendent, who is phenomenal, came in and she becomes our receiver in essence. So she kind of oversees the school. We have to have like public hearings every so often, just explaining what receivership is. And I laugh and joke that it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because like as a new administrator, what do you want to do? Like you want to implement change. Like I have this burning passion within me to do so many different things. And now's the time, right? Like receivership, you get in there by being in a bottom percentage of the state academically. And what I've told the staff is like, stop trying to get out of receivership and start trying to be great. Like start taking chances. I would much rather you take a chance and fail than just try to be average and get out of receivership, because ultimately we want to be a blue ribbon school. We're working on redoing like our mission and vision statement right now and our value statement, and our overall goal is to be a blue ribbon school. So like, what is it going to take to get there? It's not going to take being average. It's going to take being great, right?
What do you mean by take a chance? Like when you say take a chance, if I'm a teacher and I'm sitting there and you're like, take a chance, kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone. What do you exactly mean by that? What do you want to see me do?
So I think that it goes It's multifaceted for sure. Like I will give you a for instance, right? Like I had a teacher come in. We have an ENL population here, so we've got about 32 students right now where English is their second language. And one of our ENL teachers came to me the other day, and she's just like, "Kyle, we're doing these shared reading cycles, and it goes through a week, and I've been thinking about this for a long time. They need more language immersion skills. We need to expand their vocabulary and their background knowledge so that they're actually understanding what they're reading."
Mm,
And so I said, well, what do you want to do? Like, I think the best thing you can do as a principal is hear people out and be willing to say yes when it goes against your grain, if they have some sort of merit to it, right? So I sat there and I heard it out. And like, that's what I did as a coach, was a lot of literacy based type interventions with teachers. And so shared reading was kind of like my baby, and she's stepping on that saying, I want to take this same cycle throughout 2 weeks. Then do it. Like, what you just explained to me is more than okay, as long as you can tell me what you're doing and why. And the why isn't, well, I just know it's going to be good. Then go for it. But we need to collect some data around that. So we implemented a research study. We have a DDI task that we were giving our kids today, and we're using that as a dipstick. So between now and the next assessment 6 weeks from now, let's see how your students do compared to other students. So we're not shooting in the dark, because we can't come back and say you're piloting something, and then in a month say, how's it working? And you just say, oh, I love it, it's great. But how's it
yeah.
working, right? So that there's some merit behind that. But when we talk about taking chances and doing things, like we use reading and writing workshop as our foundation of our curriculum. And so many times people just want to follow lockstep. Like this, it says that we're in a informational writing unit and we're supposed to be writing about penguins. Well, does your class like penguins? No, then do something different. Like
Right.
bring in some project-based learning, right? Like there's no better time to do that than during a nonfiction unit.
Yeah.
Do some math science integration, like bring other areas into what you're doing, build thematic units, make this more than just what the classroom next door is doing, and be okay that it's going to fail. Like if you're not failing, you're not trying. So if you're not failing, you need to push the envelope a little bit more. And do we want you to fail all the time? No, but I would say 90% of the time we take a calculated chance, it usually plays out in our favor.
Yeah, and that's where success comes from. And I'm guessing those same people are also the same when it comes to rules. It's sort of like you get in that mindset where, okay, we say no hats or no hoods, and which I get it. I get that from an administrative standpoint, you have to do that, but also I feel like there needs to be judgment that gets used along with it, to where you kind of are like, okay, this is the rule, but yes, it says 65, but 65 might mean 70, and we're not going to harass people. And I think some people in education, what I've learned is a lot of educators were really good kids as kids, right? Most kids who struggle in school don't go into education, right? Who goes into education? People who like school. It makes sense. You like school, you want to be a teacher. So I think they have a lot of times have a hard time viewing something from the lens of, well, stop sign means stop, and unless there's no cars coming, and that it means slow down and go. Like they have a hard time making that connection. Do you feel like you have to draw that for certain people? Like where you, because for me as a teacher, you wouldn't have had to, right? For me, it would have meant I wouldn't even have asked you. I wouldn't have asked. I would have said, in my mind, I would have just been like, you know what I'm doing right now, I don't feel like is working the way I want it to work. I'm just going to do X, Y, or Z and hope it works out. And maybe if there's a problem and he asks why I did it, I'll tell him then, you know?
And I was the same way. And it's so hard to break that grain for people who are rule followers, like
Yes.
people who I am going to follow the rules no matter what, right? So we're trying to get teachers to have that individual autonomy, right? You know, from all the research that's been done, giving teacher autonomy is one of the best, most effective things that you can do, right? That collective teacher efficacy is another one. So like collaborate with each other, don't do it in a silo, be a team, be a community, and feel free to take those risks together. Or maybe you're really rolling the dice on something and you're going to try it in one classroom and then share the wealth if it works. And if it doesn't, you're going to keep it to yourself. But yeah, we want teachers to feel comfortable to take risks and to do them on their own. If you're not there yet, I'll be your sounding board for sure. I'll talk to you about like, what are your concerns? What are your trepidations? How could we work this out? What do you need logistically? But by all means, do it. Like take a chance and fail, and we'll right the ship. It's not gonna end the kid's world if we take a chance and it doesn't work out.
I've told this story on here a couple of times, but I love it. It was so when I was teaching full time, I had a principal who we had our school was we were required to post the school rules in our classroom, and I didn't like that. I was annoyed by that because and I say I've talked about this multiple times. I don't even like the word rule. I prefer the word expectation to the word rule. I think an expectation tells a person what to do versus a rule telling you what not to do. No hitting, that would be a rule. I prefer the expectation of keeping your hands and feet to yourselves. See how one is teaching you something, the other is teaching you what not to do. But bottom line is I didn't like this, and I didn't even want to post the rules at all. And so I went to my principal, and I was in my first year, so I was kind of dumb. Like, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know as a first year teacher you're not really supposed to complain. And so I was kind of naive, and I went to her and I said, I don't like this. And she said, yeah, I hear you that you don't like it, but it's not coming from me. It's coming from above me. You have to go post the rules. And so I went back to my room, and then a couple days later I went back to her office, and I was like, I really don't like this. And she looks at me, she goes, get in my office. So I said, okay. So I go in. She says, close the door. So I close the door. She says, sit down. So I sit down. She looks at me and she says, it says the rules have to be posted. It doesn't say what font they have to be in. It doesn't say you can't move a filing cabinet in front of them. Get out of my office. And I was like, okay. And in that moment, that was the moment that I learned that you guys as administrators are often getting things from above you that sometimes you agree with, sometimes you don't, that you're trying to implement. But basically her point was use your judgment. Like, don't come in here complaining to me about every little thing. Like, if you see a thing that you can do better, or you have a way to do it better, do it. And you know what? Figure out how within the system you need to play it so that you can get what you need and I can get what I need. And that was a really helpful lesson for me early in my career.
Yeah, so as it pertains to rules, we kind of do things a little bit differently here. So we've got like our school rules, our tenets, our PBIS, if you will, which is just a foundation to say that kids are going to be safe, respectful, and responsible. And we call it Be Gold. We go with like an Olympic type theme for it. But when it comes to classroom rules, the kids write them. So we don't have like a set of rules that says this is what you have to do. Each class starts by writing a class compact at the beginning of the school year where they take ownership and like, what does this room have to look like? And that I do tell teachers that has to be placed in the room. It should have all the kids' signatures on it. It should be pretty explicit, and it should be a living document, right? Because things are going to come up. We start every day in every room with a 30-minute morning meeting. So as things come up at morning meeting and they're recurring themes, then we need to revisit the class compact. But on top of that, we also have a treatment agreement. So it's basically like a big peace sign, and there's different levels to it. So like, how do teachers treat students? How do students treat teachers? And how do students treat each other? And that's something that they also uphold, but they don't do that until like early October, because they need to feel each other out and see like, what are the issues that are arising here? What are we having to solve on a regular basis? And then let's talk about how we want to be treated by the teacher, but also how should the teacher want to treat us? So for the first like 2 months of school, those really drive our daily morning meetings every single day.
So the morning meetings, take me through that. So what happens? The kids come in. They do teachers run them differently though, probably based on their own style. And so kids kind of come in and they just talk about life. They talk about things that are bothering them. Is that talk about good things, just kind of whatever?
Yeah, so it used to be that. It kind of started with that last year when I just saw the need to increase the level of relationships that we're building with kids, but it's really morphed into a lot more. So to start every day now, I come on the loudspeaker. We start school at 7:50. So I come on at 8 o'clock when they're sitting in their morning meeting. We implemented a Spark. So every single day, every single teacher greets every single kid at the door. And some have developed their own handshakes, nothing to the level of the dope educator, but so I don't think anyone's at that level, but some have created their own handshakes. Most of them have like a template that we put out where it's like this standard that you see on Facebook, like the high five, a hug, a fist, like, what do you need this morning? But instantly get the dipstick of your class, because right there you can weed out your 3 kids who are starting the day on a negative note. Have those conversations from 7:50 to 8 o'clock, or get them in contact with the social worker. Call me, call someone who's got a relationship with the kid. So then I come on the loudspeaker at 8 o'clock. We do our whole piece with the morning meeting, but then we do our district-wide, our superintendent has implemented what's called a Patriot Pause. So the whole district, every single morning, has a 1-minute pause where you're just reflecting on your day and what you're going to need to do to be successful. Just kind of helps get kids in the right mindset. So I'm in the office while it happens. And honestly, like, I was thinking, dude, we got like 3-year-olds and 3-year-old pre-K. Like, this is going to be a mess. They're not. The pre-K teachers have said like they're dead silent and they like it. Like, it's a good reflective time. So we go to the Patriot Pause, we do the pledge, we do all that good stuff, birthdays and everything like that. And then we do what's called a 60-second relate break. So it's just I've got a whole list of questions, and we just pose questions. Sometimes it's deep, sometimes it's what's your favorite topping on your pizza.
Mm.
But so they have 60 seconds to answer with as many friends as they can. And then I come on the loudspeaker, and Mr. Skinner's favorite topping on his pizza is whatever. I want you
What
to
is
know
it?
that my favorite topping,
Yeah,
I'm like a everything guy. As
me
long as
too.
the onions aren't raw, that's no good.
Oh, see, I love raw onions.
Oh no, 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 no way. That would be on my nasty pizza list.
No way.
But
But so what's your number one though? If it was like death row and you got one topping, what are you going with?
oh, I'm gonna go pepperoni. I'm gonna keep it
Pepperoni,
classic. Yeah, for
classic.
sure.
Yeah. That's a tough
So
one for me though. It's so for me it's either it's sausage or jalapeno. I'm a sausage guy over pepperoni. Although I like the pepperonis, but they got to be the curled pepperonis. You know what I mean by the curled ones? I
I
don't like
most
the flat
certainly do.
ones. The curled ones that curl up on the edges. If it's not, they gotta collect a little pool of grease in the middle. As long as they can do that, I'm good.
I'm with you there for sure.
They got good food down where you are, by the way. I mean, the Speedy, I'm a huge buffalo chicken Speedy guy. So that's an amazing for people who don't know what that is. Basically a it's like a chicken finger sub, but it's not fried. It's grilled chicken. So it's a little healthier for you. Then they put blue cheese dressing all over it and wing sauce and cheese and all the other stuff. But delicious. One of my favorite foods from down there.
Yeah, it's for sure a Binghamton staple.
It really is. So okay, sorry, go on.
Okay. So we start talking about food.
I know.
So so we do the 60-second relate break, which is huge because then anyone in the hall who sees a kid looks a little bit off, they look sad, they're not quite themselves, or they just want to converse. Hey, what was your favorite kind of pizza that you talked about this morning? It gives that instant spark between you and the kid. So we end announcements every morning. I tell them I love you. I'm glad you're here today. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate you. I hope you enjoy your morning meeting. And then that kind of sets the tone for the teachers. And we have a couple of different programs that we've used in terms of like social emotional learning that has some structures to it. So like if teachers are really looking for structure because they're struggling, especially some of the newer teachers, they'll use like the connected and respected curriculum. We've used some zones of regulation and some of those types of things, but it's really pretty open to the teacher as long as it's student centered and student driven. And we're again forcing kids to not only talk about what their favorite pizza is, but maybe things that are bothering them. We're giving them safe outlets. We have one rule that what happens at circle stays at circle, so that they're not talking about that outside of the classroom to other students because you touch on some sensitive things. But you address so much stuff in the first 30 minutes of school that like once that's done, you're ready and focused on some learning.
Does the teacher share as well? Is the teacher encouraged to share?
Yeah, it does not work if a teacher's not willing to be vulnerable and share, but share honestly, because we all know that a kid will spot a fake message, a fake greeting, a fake anything from a million miles away. So the classrooms that it's most successful in are the ones where the teachers are the most vulnerable, and that's usually where it starts, right? So I did do some work as a coach around the circles. We've kind of started this notion of the restorative practices within our district, and it's been going for a while now. It started over at East Middle School, so I was dipping my toes in the pool with that a little bit around some of the relationship pieces, and that's what I found. Like I would just open up with something about myself that they wouldn't have seen coming, and instantly it makes you relatable to the
Can you
kids.
give me
Like
an example? What's an example of something you might share that people don't know about you, or that people will go, "Whoa."
yeah, so that I was a terrible student in school. I did not care about school one bit, and it almost bit me. I almost didn't get into college to play basketball like I wanted to because I didn't take school seriously. And it was a wake up call for me when I started realizing they actually had to create a class for me. I went to a small Catholic school in Binghamton. They had to create a class for me so I could go through the NCAA clearinghouse and be eligible to play in my freshman year. And luckily, the priest at the school was willing to create some. It was like religion around the world or something like that. But it gave me enough credits of passing credits for me to be able to play. But then that it's never too late to right the ship, right? Like, so that gets kids caught off. Like, what do you mean you're the principal of a school? You didn't care about class and you didn't really care about school. And then I would be able to be the springboard to the conversation of, well, you can do things differently. You can always change and you can always choose to apply yourself. I wish I did it in fifth grade because it would have made a world of difference and would have made my life a lot easier.
Were your parents, though, you have two parents that were in the home? Were they not pushing you to do well in school, or you just, it wasn't for you?
So they did. It would kind of be like a tooth and nail fight. My mom's actually a teacher, so
Right.
interesting story. She was working at this daycare center, and so while I was in high school, like end of high school and on into college, she was finishing up going back to school to become a teacher because she had always wanted to do it. But um, my parents were pretty young when they had kids and got married and everything like that. She just never had finished her schooling. So she went back to school around the same time as me. And my first job was right around the corner here at Ben Franklin from my mom's classroom. So we would be like buddy classrooms and do sharing and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, they would always kind of be on me. But again, like I was more than happy and complacent to just say, okay, you said I got to read at night and I'll sit there and I'll look at this book for 20 minutes. My mind was all over the place. It was not on
Got
that
it.
book. But what I did was I got really, really good, and it actually helped me in my grad school work and in my administrative work. I got really good on just piggybacking what other kids said. Like I quickly learned, like I don't necessarily need to read the book. Like I can just go and listen to what the first few kids say and latch onto it and put my charm on it and elaborate enough that it's like I read. And I would get by with that, but because of that, my reading comprehension skills weren't great early on and kind of had to hone them. But again, I read an educational book today, and there's sometimes like I can't put the book down. Like if it grabs my interest and it's something I like,
Yeah.
it's huge for me. So I
But
remember one of my
that's
teachers.
great.
Yeah, for sure. I remember one of my teachers got me into those Matt Christopher books. For me, everyone has that teacher. Mine was Miss Wrights in third grade at Vestal Hills Elementary School, and she just hooked me on some Matt Christopher books, and it was all about sports, and it stuck with me, and I started to see reading levels jump up. I started to see some success, and then you go to the next year to the next teacher, and if they're not as vested in that process and they're not going to help you find that next book or next series, you're complacent again.
Well, they say, right, reading is just let them read whatever they want to read. I mean, let kids read whatever they want to read. And it's, I think sometimes even as a parent, that's hard though, because there's times, where my daughter especially will want to read something that I think is much below her reading level. And it's hard for me to not sometimes say to her, why do you want to read that? Or you're a better reader than that. But I've noticed that every time I do that, it disengages her. It pushes her away from reading versus just embracing whatever she wants to read, even if it's a couple grade levels below where she is, taking what she wants to do in that moment and just doing it with her as a dad. I feel like such a better approach. And that's the thing in school though, a lot of times is we force reading, although I think we're better about that now. I think teachers in general have really learned that let the kid read what they want to read. Reading should really be, for the most part, I think, free time, free reading. Of course, there needs to be guidance with everything, but, for the most part, that's how I see it. You guys have pre-K to 5 in your school?
We do, yeah, 3-year-old pre-K through fifth grade.
So how do you integrate that? Do you do any work like that where you take fifth graders? And one of my big things that I love when you have a school like that is you can have fifth graders working with pre-K school kids, or you can have, a fourth grader work with a kindergartner and kind of help each other, mentor each other. Do you do anything with that?
Yeah, we do a lot of that. It's more on a teacher by teacher basis. So one of our pre-K teachers just moved down from fourth grade, so she's got a great relationship with the fourth grade teachers. So she'll frequently have them come in and do buddy reading and whatnot. We also have, it's called a fifth grade ambassadors program, and they're basically like the ambassadors, if you will, for the school. Like they'll come in and greet guests that we have in the school. They'll tour them around the building. We have a huge auditorium here, so like sometimes they'll come and they'll put on productions here. They'll come in, they'll greet the other buildings, learn to shake their hand, welcome to Ben Franklin, bring them into the auditorium to their seats. They take a lot of ownership and pride in the building. So they just built a sensory path that you see all over Facebook, all over the
Yeah.
place. So they built one of their own. It's awesome.
Oh,
It's got a
cool.
big B on it. Yeah, they've got like the big B, the Binghamton logo on it, and that's how they start the path. And they create it, they take ownership of it, they change it every so often, so the whole school can use it. And a lot of times the ambassadors will go down and they'll help with the little kids. They're the ones who will like do the backpack programs on Fridays and help distribute food to families and that type of thing. So we try to get the older kids working with the younger kids as best we can.
Fifth grade is one of those crazy ages, I feel like, where you can have kids you know, you can be breaking up a fight between girls on the playground over quote unquote my man, and then 2 seconds later you turn around and there's another kid holding a doll. You know what I mean? Like comforting their doll, and you're just and there's a fight over here between girls who are upset about a man, so to speak, quote unquote, and then 2 seconds later there's the girl with a pacifier and a doll going, "I love you, little baby," and I mean, it's in the span of seconds. It's amazing.
And everything in between. And from teaching fifth grade, the one guarantee you have is in the spring, it is going to smell funky in that classroom before you have that deodorant conversation. Always.
Do you have that with them in fifth grade? The deodorant? How do you have that? What do you do?
Yeah.
You
So
guys stink?
yeah, pretty much sometimes. So we would have the conversation when I was teaching fifth grade, at least we would have the conversation. So when I taught fifth grade, for most of the time there was another guy who taught, and then there was two female teachers. We had four sections, so we would kind of divide and conquer, have some informal conversations, let the parents know we were doing it, but then you have to sometimes have the brutally honest conversation of like, we're going to get you some deodorant, and we're gonna take care of this right here.
You know what though? There's a lot of kids who don't learn that other places. They don't learn that, or they don't get it from other places. And that's my rule. If they're not going to get it anywhere else, they got to get it at school. You know, we are the place where they get what they need, you know, and sometimes that's education, sometimes that's reading, sometimes that's math, sometimes that's ELA, but sometimes that's everything else. Sometimes it's please and thank you and nice to meet you and good morning and how to make eye contact with a person and smile. You know, I've told the story when I worked I consulted at a middle school outside of Des Moines, Iowa. I don't know if I told this at the seminar you were at or not, but I worked at this school, and I walked into the room, and the first room I walked in. So usually when I walk in a room, you know, when school's in session, it's a little bit awkward. You know, I'm a consultant. Nobody knows me. They don't know what I'm doing there. They're what, you know, so I walk in, and 95% of the time, somebody from I'll get 1 foot in the room, and from where I'll hear, "Who are you? Why are you here? Are you her husband?" And I'm always like, "No, but she wishes." And, you know, just to see the teacher has a little bit of a sense of humor. And, you know, but it's awkward, and it's not, you know, an easy way to enter a class. And, you know, so this school in Des Moines was different. I walked in, and what happened was I got in the room and no one even did anything. They all kind of looked up at me, and then they looked right back down. And I sort of weaved my way to the back corner, and I see this boy get up out of his chair, and he was on the other side of the room. He starts walking over to me, and I could tell he was eyeing me, you know, and I wasn't sure exactly what he was going to do. And he stops about, you know, 6, 7 inches from me, and he looks right at me, and he reaches out his right hand, and he looks me right in the eyes, and he goes, "Hi," just like that. And I said, "Hi." And he goes, "My name's Chris." And I said, "Hi, Chris." He goes, "This is sixth grade social studies. Today we're working on different causes of the Civil War. If there's anything I can help you with, I'll be sitting right over there. That's my seat." And he pointed to his chair. And then he said, "Thank you for visiting our class." And he turned and walked away. And I was like, holy sugar, like, who does that? That never happens. Then I go to the next class, same thing. The third class. So the third class was funny because there was a girl, and she gets up to do the same thing. And have you ever been in a situation where you're talking to someone, but they're not really looking right at you? They're kind of looking over your shoulder, and you're secretly wondering what's going on. Like, you're like, do they have a wandering eye? What's happening with them? You don't say anything,
Right.
but that was what's going on with her. She was looking. So whatever, she did the thing, and she did a great job. And as I turned to leave the room, I noticed over my left shoulder, there was a full-blown script taped to the wall. It says, "Hi, my name is blank." And then in parentheses, it says, "Reach out your right hand now." And she was like very robotic, you know, and that's why she wasn't looking at me. She was actually reading the script. And so I turned to I left that room, and I get to the principal for lunch. I met up with the principal at lunch, and she said, "How was your morning?" And my answer was, "I don't know." And she said, "What do you mean you don't know?" I said, "I'm still caught up on the fact that every single classroom I walked into in your school, a kid got out of their seat, walked over to me unprompted, reached out their hand, looked me in the eyes, smiled, and said, 'Good morning.'" And she looked at me and she goes, "Our greeters." I said, "You're what?" She said, "Our greeters." She said, "At our school, I require every classroom to have a class greeter. And the class greeter's responsibility is any stranger, so to speak, that walks in." Because she goes, "Look, we have people coming in all the time. We have student teachers, we have parents, we have volunteers, there's people that just kind of come in and out, and there's no real easy way to do that." And she said, "Now this alleviates that, and no one wonders who's going to say hi, and the teacher doesn't have to stop teaching." It was such a great move. And I tell teachers, anybody can do that. Like whether you teach kindergarten or you teach 11th grade Spanish, you can have a version of a class grader. And I kind of feel like that's what your ambassadors are, but they're doing it on a building level.
Yeah, totally. So, and on top of the ambassadors too, I'm really, really excited. So when I taught fifth grade, or when I was a collaborative coach, one of the fifth grade teachers and I started a club at the school. It's called the BF Gents. And basically, like we took young men and taught them how to be young men. We taught them how to tie a tie. We had dress for success days every Wednesday. We started to do the things, and it just dawned on us, like, how many times do you hear teachers say, like, that's not an appropriate way to conduct yourself? Would you talk like that at a restaurant? If we're talking about, I don't know, I've never been to a restaurant. So, like, we have to expose these kids to these kinds of things. So uh, it fizzled out when I went into administration, because I didn't have the time as a year one administrator to oversee it. My phys ed teacher came to me earlier this year and he's like, I think we should start the BF Gents back up. I'll take it on. So we did. And we had all sorts of community outpouring when people started hearing about it. If you're on social media, follow me at Mr. Skinner BF on Instagram or Twitter, and there's some stories about that as well as our district PR. But so we got a free meal at Outback Steakhouse. They all went in. It was amazing to see. Half of them didn't know how to cut the bread. They got the nice little loaves that didn't know how to cut the bread. Didn't like, where's my silverware? It's in the black fabric in front of you. Like, what do I do with this? It was such an eye-opening experience. But you're sitting there and you're thinking, like, if there's something that's a pet peeve of yours that kids do, then teach them how to do it correctly, right? We have to be more than a school now, right? It says it on the t-shirts, you got to be more than a school, because if you're just trying to be a school at this point in our lives, you're missing out, because
Yeah.
schools don't train kids for the real world anymore. It's just not how it works.
And I think it has to go a step beyond, teaching. I think it's teaching and practicing. It's the practice piece is so important. It's kind of like in sports. You can teach someone how to shoot a jump shot all day, but they have to go out and shoot it. And it's the same in school. I mean, you can teach a kid how to be polite all day long, but you have to put them in situations where it's important for them to actually practice. And without that, it doesn't really matter how much you teach them. It matters putting them into those moments. And that's why that's so beneficial, because you're not just telling them about going out to a restaurant, you're taking them there and you're showing them this is what happens when you get here. And then somebody seats you and, you keep your feet on the floor and there's just so many little details that go into it. And, I say all the time, manners are the key. I mean, when I have a teacher who's struggling, right? When a teacher comes to me and they're like, I'm struggling, I don't really want to know what to do, I'm exasperated, I'm kind of lost, I feel like quitting, I don't, I say, go to manners. That's what I tell them. Go take your focus and turn it to make it your mission that by the end of this school year, you will have the most well-mannered kids anybody's ever seen. And everything you do on a daily basis, make your planning toward that, right? Forget the 3+3 and you're going to get to that. We're not saying you're never going to get to that, but put that away for now. Like, put it away. Don't make it your focus, and make your focus kids being nice to each other, kids getting along with each other, kids learning how to disagree with each other appropriately, instead of, man, you're so stupid. It's, whoa, excuse me, I don't agree with you, can you please explain more about what you were thinking? And you actually have those conversations and those practices, and when you do that, you see an incredible shift. And manners are the foundation. Once you have good manners, usually you have good behavior.
hmm And what we have to take out of the equation is complaining about the fact that they don't. Like, you can complain all you want, but they should. That's not my job. That's not why. It is your job, and it is why you went into teaching. And I think it was Jimmy Cassis earlier on in one of your earlier podcasts, who talked about the teacher you were at the interview. So that
Yeah.
something that has really resonated with, like, who were you at your interview? How would you have answered that question at your interview? And complaining is like the most toxic thing that can happen, right? And what do we do when we complain? We literally shut our brain's ability to access the frontal lobe, where decision and change comes from. Like, when you complain, you're taking away any
Right.
possible change. So stop complaining and just act on it. Go do something about it.
Yeah, what he said, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it was one of the great moments on the show where he said, I'm pretty sure when you're sitting in the interview and somebody asks you the question, how would you handle a difficult to find unmotivated kid? I'm pretty pretty sure your answer isn't, I would get frustrated, I would get annoyed, I would kick him out, I would call his mom, I would, like you don't, that's not the answer that you would give in the interview. The answer is I would care more, I would spend more time with him, I would get to know him better, I would build a deeper relationship and go back to that person, the one that you just had when you were interviewing, and so powerful to remember that. Any last pieces of wisdom or nuggets you want to leave anyone? These hours go quick, man.
Yeah, that was fast. No, I want to thank you for everything you do. I want to thank all the educators out there. You guys are doing tremendous work. You're moving mountains for kids. Please keep it up. Please continue to take risks, take chances, step outside your comfort zone, because nothing good is going to happen in your comfort zone. You're going to just remain where you are, never be okay with where you are for sure. And follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Mr. Skinner BF.
Yep, and they'll obviously, the week that this comes out, I'll promote you all over my social media, so they'll get to find you through mine as well. And and I say this all the time, discomfort is the appetizer for growth. And it's so healthy in life to look at discomfort that way, that it's temporary. You go through it temporarily and it makes you better. And it's true both physical and emotional. It's when you ever have a personal trainer and they work you out, you hate them during the workout. You do not like them. They are not your friend. Usually you're cussing them out. And by the end, usually you love them. And that's really sort of the goal here, is sometimes you're going to go through uncomfortable things, I think, as a teacher or a person who works with kids. But if you can get through that, teaching is, in my opinion, the most rewarding thing. There's nothing more rewarding than taking a kid who everybody said couldn't make it. And you're like, yeah, watch this kid, at least, watch this kid all of a sudden say please and thank you, and make that the work that you do with the kids. Listen, man, I appreciate everything that you do for kids. I appreciate what, it's not an easy job, and there's a lot of people who shy away from that, and you don't. And thank you, man. On behalf of everybody out there, thank you for what you do. And I'll catch up with you soon. All right.
All right, sounds good. Thanks a lot,
Good to
Brian.
see you, buddy. Yep.
Take care.